Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Nasa Stride. Today I'll be showing you how to make this simple stylish jumpsuit with a teardrop design. If it's something you're interested in, let's get into this. So I've gone ahead to cut out a piece on fold for my trouser. So we're cutting the trouser firstly. We're starting with that of the front. So you should cut out your fold based on the largest part of your body divided by 2 plus extra inches. So the first thing we're marking down is the hip point. Now, considering the fact that it is a trouser, it is a jumpsuit, we're going to be joining it with that of the top. You're going to add 1 inch to your normal hip point. So if your normal hip point is 8 inches, that means you'll be using 9 inches for this. So I just marked that down, and then I marked my knee point also. And I'm just ruling a line at those points which I just indicated. So the next thing I want to do is to indicate my crouch depth. So my crouch depth is my round hip divided by 4 plus 2 inches, since this is a jumpsuit, okay? And I don't want this to be snugged around the crouch area. That was what I used. So if this wasn't a jumpsuit, I would have added just 1 inch to it. But since it's a jumpsuit, I added 2 inches to that to give me that free this thing I wanted. So the next thing I'm going to do is to go in and mark quarter of my round hip. So I'm marking this on my hip line firstly, okay, and I'll also make the same mark on my crouch line. So go ahead and mark quarter of your round hip. That is your round hip, circumference of your hip divided by 4. Okay, so we're going to just rule this line, take it down to the crouch line, okay, and then also extend it towards the top part, that's towards the waist area, since the top part will be acting as our waist in this. All right, so you can see the line we have there like so. Now from that line, I'm going to take quarter of my round waist measurement. So we're not using an elastic for this, so you need to work with your waist measurement. So I just took that's the round waist divided by 4. I marked it at that point, okay? So for this, we're not going to be adding that to the front of our trouser, all right? And I'm connecting from that point to meet my hip line like so. Okay, so you can see what we have there. Now to get our crouch curve on that point, so there are actually 2 ways to do this, and I've noticed that I actually get them correctly. What I do is to divide what I have there, that's quarter of my round hip. I will divide that by 4 again, and whenever I do that, I get 2.5 inches, and I will mark that down. And then what I also do is to take half of my round thigh. So when I take half of my round thigh circumference is 26 inches. So when I take that and divide it by 2, I have 13. So if I mark 13 inches at that point and then measure it after my hip line, I also have 2.5 inches. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So just go ahead and divide what you had there by 4 inches extra so that you know what to come out for your curve. And then I went up by 1 inch, just using my free hand to just curve that to have my crouch curve at that point. All right, so you can see that's what I mean. So I'll take the measurement I have there. It's something I always like doing because I want this to be free around the thigh area, right? I actually don't like my trousers to be tight around my thigh area. So I took that measurement, and I have what I usually have when I just go in and measure my round thigh divided by 2, like I was saying. Okay, it's something I've noticed. So this is what we're going to have for this. I will just go ahead and replicate it to the full length of my trouser piece, okay? And then I will just cut out the part I will not be using for this. That is all for the front. Now for the back, I've gone ahead to fold in another piece, ensuring I had more than what I had at the back, at the front, sorry, and then I added extra inches to that. So what I'm doing is that at the top of this, I'm going all by 1 inch because of the butt allowance, okay, at that point, and I just made a mark right there to indicate it. So you notice that if you I've noticed, sorry, that if you don't add this allowance to adjust your trouser at the back, it's always gaping at the end. So that is what I'm trying to avoid, so that it's easier for you to sit. Now around the crotch area, the allowance, I'll be adding allowances to the back, so the back is bigger than that of the front. So I'm adding 2.5 inches at the back. Okay, that's the allowance I'm using at the back. Then for other sides at the back, I'm using 2 inches. So I use 2.5 inches at the crouch area, and then I'm using 2 inches for the other point. So if you're using 1.5 inches for your allowance, you should use 2 inches around the crouch area. If you're using 2.5, you should use 3 inches. It depends on your size. Whatever allowances you're adding totally depends on your size or who you're making the outfit for. All right. So I just went on to curve that, and then I will continue measuring my 2 inches allowance at the other point after the crouch area. Now, the reason you need more allowances is for stitching, because you definitely have to stitch this down. Okay, stitch them together down, and ensure that your crouch curve, the curve for your crouch, for that of the front and the back, they are on the same line, on the same frequency. You don't want one to be high and the other one to be low. It's not going to give you a nice fitting by the time you finish. I think getting the crouch for trousers, it's where a lot of people struggle. So I think I've tried different methods to getting it. And after making this jumpsuit and wearing it, it came out looking as I wanted it to look. The crouch wasn't snugged at all. So I advise you use the method I'm using now to get that perfect crouch around that area, especially if you're making a jumpsuit. Okay, so I've connected that. Now the back of this is going to have a dart at the waist area. I just added 1 inches to that, and then I'm going to connect it to nothing at the hip area. So remember that the front doesn't have a dart. The dart only sits at the back. So if you want to dart your front and the back, you can go ahead to do that. But I'm just going to dart the back alone for this. Now I'm going to connect that point I went all by 1 inch. I'll connect it to meet the other end there. So where I went all by 1 inch was where I have my crouch area, as you can see. So I'll connect it to meet the side line on the other side. Okay. So after that, I will just go ahead and cut out the parts I will not be needing for this. That's what we have for the cotton. Now this jumpsuit is going to have a pocket for the front. At the waist area, I went inwards by 3 inches. I made a mark there, and I'm going down by 6 inches. Now this is for my pocket opening, so I used 3 inches for the width and then 6 inches for the depth. So I want my pocket to have a curve at that edge. That's the pocket edge, opening edge should have like a curve. And I went in with my curve rule to just mark out the kind of curve I want. So if you want yours to be straight, you just want a simple slant, you can go ahead to do that. So after doing that, I just went in with my scissors to take out that part. So you can see the kind of curve I have at that end. That is how I want it to be. Now for the pocket bag, I'm gonna head to cut out this piece for my pocket bag. The length I have here is 13 inches in length, and then the width is 8 inches on fold. So what I'll do is to open this up, and then I will just open it up at the base. Okay, that's because I have two sides of my pocket, so I'm going to be using this piece for the two sides of the pocket. I'm going to just split it open, just open it up at this end so that I'm going to have them separated for me to work with. So because I'm using a crepe, you want to ensure that you make marks at the wrong side of your fabric so that you're not confused. Okay, keep that in mind. So the next thing I'll do is to bring in my front piece. So I'm just going to align that pocket area together where I cut out the pocket for my front piece, and I will just trace that out on my pocket back piece. So you can see this is opened up, so I have one end open and I have the other end closed. So this will be what I'll do is to just make marks on the wrong side. You can see I'm doing that so that I'm not mistaken later on. So what I'll do is to I'll use one piece of this to show you how we'll be stitching this down. So you're going to be placing this right side to right side. You'll take this over to the machine and then you just stitch it down by half of an inch together, flip it over to the wrong side and then close up the ends. So I'll do the same thing to this other one, place it right side to right side and stitch it down. So we're going to just leave this aside and then work on the outside. So for the top part of this, we're making use of a simple bodice. So I've gone ahead to fold my fabric into two. For this, I'm just going to rule a line. So I want to start with the front part of my bodice. I'm just ruling a line to indicate the starting line of this, where my measurement will be coming from, and also my shoulder line. So I'm just going to take the measurement from that point. I'm going to indicate my bust point, my waist, my underbust, and then the waist. So for the half length, you want to add half of an inch, at least half of an inch to your half length, because remember you'll be joining this to another piece at the base. So you need to add a joining allowance. So that's what the allowance is for joining to the base. So I just ruled my lines at those points which are finished marking. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to mark half of my shoulder measurement. I will just go ahead and mark it down at that point, all right, to indicate it. Then I'll come down by 8 inches at that point, then mark my half of my shoulder measurement again at that point. Okay, no, this is just to have a straight line. So I'll connect this together in a straight line and then connect it in a horizontal line going outward like so. Okay, so go ahead and go down by 1 inch for our shoulder slant. Then for the neck width, I'll be using a neck width of 3 inches. I'm going to mark it down. Okay, so I'll connect that point of my shoulder slant to meet my neck width like so. Right, so we have that there. Now I'm going to go down for my neck depth by 4 inches. So this is the front. It needs to be a bit deeper. You can go deeper if you want yours to be more open. So I just used 4 inches for that, and I'm using my rule to just get the curve. So I'm using a simple round neck, C neck. So that's just what I'm just using at that point. I just used my curve rule to give me the perfect curve I need around that area. Okay, after that I'm going ahead to mark quarter of my round bust and then adding 1.5 inches of seam allowance. That is the allowance we'll be using for this. Now on my sleeve depth, armhole depth, I just went ahead to take the measurement I have there divided by 2, and then I went in by half of an inch at that point which I marked. So I'll just use my curve rule to just connect my armhole curve at that point. So remember I said we're just making use of a simple bodice. For the up is as simple as it can be. This is like the normal bodice block. The only difference we're going to have later on is the introduction of our teardrop design. So that's just it. Now after doing that, as you can see, I will just replicate the measurement I have on the chest line, on the bust line also, and then I will take quarter of my round waist measurement, indicate it, and then add 1.5 inches for my seam allowance. Now this is going to have a straight dart, so I'm going to add 1 inches for that allowance because I'll be adding that to it. So you can use whatever that you want to use for this. It totally depends on your choice and how you want your dart to be. So I'm going to just make a mark for my dart, taking in half of my bust span. That's the difference distance from one nipple to the other divided by 2. So I marked those lines from the waist down to the bust point. I just marked what I had there. Then I will go down from the bust area by 1 inch because that is not meant to get to that point. Now on the waist area, I'm going to go in and out on my dart leg by half of an inch on both sides, and I'll connect it like so. Right, so you can see this is what we have for the front piece. We'll just go ahead to cut it out. All right, you can see this is our front piece. Like I said, it's just a simple bodice block. Now we're going to fold up another piece to cut out the back. So I'm going to place this on a fold. So I'm just trying to manage my fabric. So for this tutorial, I'm making use of 3 yards of crepe. Depending on the size or the length you're working with, you can need more, you'll be needing more, all right, not less. So for my zip allowance, I'm making use of a zip allowance of 1 inch. I'm just marking it down on my back piece, which I've folded. So I just marked 1 inch all through, and I'm just connecting that together in a straight line. Okay, after doing that, I will bring in my front and place this after the line which I have marked. So the difference between the back and the front is the zip and then the neckline. Okay, now for the neckline of the back, I'll be making use of a neck depth of 1.5 inches, also using the same neck width. So the neck widths are going to be matching, but the neck depth of the back, we're using 1.5 inches for that. So I just connected that also in a simple C curve, and I will just cut this out. Like I said, we're doing like a simple bodice block for this jumpsuit. It's as simple as it can be. All right, so I just cut off the part I will not be needing for this, and I'm ensuring that I'm tracing exactly what I have for the front, also on the back. Now for the armhole area, the front of our armhole is usually ½ inch deeper than the back. So for the back, what I did was to just measure that ½ inch back. Since the front is deeper already, I just measured ½ inch onto that, and I'm using my free hand to just create a form of curve, and I'm going to follow that out to cut, so you can see what I have there. Okay, so I'm just making marks on my darts to indicate it on both sides for the front and the back. Okay, now for the back, on the zip area, that's the center back, we'll go all by 1 inch. We'll make a mark there, and then we connect it to nothing at the sides. The reason for this is to avoid zip bulge, and also to avoid your zip folding around the waist area. Now this is also because the front is, the shoulder to the waist in front is longer than the shoulder to the waist at the back. Okay, it's longer. So taking this off will ensure that your zip, by the time you finish fixing it, will have like it will look very neat. It's not folding at any end. So this is what we're going to have. Okay, so um what I'll do is to just go ahead and cut facing for this. So you can use a bias to pipe your necklines, but I'm using a facing. I would advise you use a facing, especially for the front, because of our teardrop design that we'll be working on later. So you can see how I'm placing my front piece, aligning it like so, and then going ahead to trace this out this way. Okay, that's what we have for the front. I'm just going to reduce the length a little bit. Now for the back, I will do the same thing. Just fold up my piece into two and then cut off my facing for the back also. So remember, the back, we have two of them, one for the right and one for the left. So you want to follow through and then do that. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use this to turn this over. For the back, I'll be using my bias to turn the edges of my facing firstly before I go ahead and turn the neckline with the facing. Now for our front piece, what you can see, I'm gonna head to place this down. So I'm going to place my facing to the main piece, right side to right side. Okay, you can see how I'm placing this. I'm placing the right side to the right side, the right side of my facing to the right side of my main piece for the front. Now we want to create our design. So I pinned it down to keep it in place. So now you're going to get a better view of what I'm trying to explain. So you want to indicate where you want your teardrop to be, on the right, on the left, wherever you choose. But I decided to fix mine on the left side. So what I did was that I took the measurement from the top to where I want the length to be. So remember that the teardrop is in a slanted form. Okay, so I just measured where I wanted this to be, and then remember, it's also going to sit at the middle point, like the edge will sit at the middle point of the shoulder. So go ahead and get the midpoint of your shoulder, get the length you want your teardrop to be. If you want it to come down more or you don't want it, it depends on how you want it to be. And then just go ahead to use your free hand to create the kind of design, the kind of teardrop design you want on your jumpsuit. So I went over this as much as I could to create how I want it to be. So you want to give yours a very nice shape. Remember, you'll be cutting this out later on, so you want it to have a very nice look. So you can see how mine is looking. So this is what I have. Okay, this is how it looks like. So I'm ensuring that the edges are well curved. So I'll go ahead and just stitch it down and then stitch the neckline also. So you're going to stitch following the lines you have for that design and then stitch the neckline by 1/2 inch. So for the trouser, we'll go ahead and work with this. I've gone ahead to fix the pocket like I said. I've also closed it down at the edges. Okay, this is what this looks like right now. You can see the pocket depth. I wanted my pocket to have a bit more depth. Okay, like I want to say that there's pocket in my jumpsuit, there's pocket, something that can hold the phone and not just be there for decorations. Okay, so I just this is my pocket, this is what it looks like. You can see the curve at the edge is looking all nice and good. So what I want to do is to bring in my back piece. Now for the back, I've gone ahead to place my dart, okay, using my bust pan to indicate. So the dart I have here is 5 inches long, 4 inches long, sorry. So it depends on how your dart should be within 4 inches to 5 inches of length. And the next thing I'm going to do is to place this together, right side to right side. I'm going to align them together at the sides. That's where I have my pocket. So you can make use of your pins, place it down together and go ahead and stitch it by 1/2 inch to the full length of this. So I've done that. This is what it looks like after I finished. After doing that, I went ahead to give it a very good press. So I did the same thing for the other side. What I'm doing now is to align my front piece to the front piece. I'm lining the front to the front. I'm aligning the crouch area of the front together, and I'll go ahead and stitch it at that area, that's the crouch area, by 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and stitch from this point to this end by 1/2 inch. So this is what it looks like after I finish stitching it. All right, so we want to work on the other side, which is the back side. We want to take a measurement and then stitch it down. So note that our zip for this jumpsuit is going to sit at the back. Okay, so because our zip is sitting at the back, we're going to be creating some kind of zip allowance for the back of at the back of our trouser. Okay, so that it fits into what we have at the top, so that our zip can sit in. So I took half of my round waist measurement at the waist area And then at the hip area, I'm going to take half of my round hip measurement also. I will just indicate that point there. All right. Then I'm going to just create a kind of curve going into the crouch area, which is the back crouch area. Okay. I'm just trying to have like the line where I'm going to stitch. Now for the zip, placing my half length outwards, I just came down by, I just marked the zip allowance I'm allowing to enter into the trouser area. Okay, so it shouldn't get to your crouch area. Your zip should just end at the hip area, okay, of your trouser. So that's what I indicated right there. That's where my zip is going to stop. So I'll go over to the machine and stitch from after that line where my zip is going to stop to the crouch area curve which I have. So I'm going to stitch from that end like so. So I've done that. You can see the opening we have for the zip at the top. So the next we're going to do is to align the crouch this way. You're going to use your pin and then place it, pin it down, and go ahead and stitch it to the right and stitch to the other end to keep it in place. Ensure that your crouch lines are aligning properly. So for the front, I'm gonna head to turn the edge of my facing with my bias. I've stitched the neckline, and I've also gone ahead to stitch around the lines I have, the mark I made for my teardrop design. So what I'm doing is just going with my scissors to trim in, following the curve I have around that. I will just trim it in like so. So you ensure that you're not trimming into your stitching line. You need to be careful with what you're doing. So just go ahead and just trim that, following that curve you have there. You trim it to the other end, ensuring you don't trim into your stitching line. Okay, it's very important you don't trim into that line. So I'm just going to take that off. All right, so this is what it looks like. So we'll just turn this over to the right side. Okay, so this is what we have this looking like, right? So what we're going to do is to go over to the ironing table, and give this a very good press so that it's relaxed. And after doing that, after ironing this properly, you're going to align this edge together and run a stitch on top of it. So you're going to align this. So make sure you iron first so that it is smooth before you go ahead and just stitch it at that point there to give us our teardrop design at that area. So this is what it looks like after I finished. I've ironed it down. You can see how fine this is looking already, and then I've stitched it down also. Now for the inside, okay, so for the inside, I've gone ahead to just place in my dart. So the dart I have for the front is 5 inches long on both ends, and then for the back, I've also placed my dart. It is 7 inches long. Now I've gone ahead to turn the back piece with a facing, and around the zip area, which is 1 inches, I didn't close that down. I'll tell you why we've not closed that down yet. So I'm going to tell you why later on, right? So we're going to leave that part like that, and we'll also do the same thing for the other piece of my front. So what I will do next is to place the both of them together, right side to right side. I'm going to place my back piece on my on my front piece, right side to right side, aligning the shoulder areas of this, and I'll go ahead and stitch it down at the shoulder by 1/2 inch on both sides. So ensure you place them properly, and then on the sides of this, I will also align it properly, and after which I will just stitch it down by 1.5 inch, which is our seam allowance on both ends. So this is what it looks like after I finished. You can see how nice this looks like. So you can also decide to fix your sleeve before stitching down the sides, whatever works for you or however you want it to be. Okay, so we should have fixed our sleeve before that, but we can still fix our sleeve on this. Our sleeves, I've gone ahead to create my sleeves. So I'm using a bishop sleeve for this. I'm sorry I do not have a video where I was making this. The video was too long. Okay, so I've gone ahead to just create my bishop sleeve, which I want to use for this. You can totally use any sleeve of your choice, and I'm just going to just pin this at the shoulder area. So what I'll do firstly is to close down the sides and then align the shoulder areas to the midpoint of my sleeve and stitch it around this. So I'm going to pin this around and then stitch it down to keep it in place. Okay, so this is what it looks like after we finished. This is the up. You can see how nice this is looking already. I finished attaching my sleeve to this. Okay, and then for the base also, this is what it looks like. So we're going to be joining the up and down together. We need to attach them together. I went ahead to fold my top piece into two to get the midpoint, and I will align this to the midpoint of that of the trouser part, pin them together and go ahead and stitch it down together to keep them in place. So this is what it looks like after I finish. A jumpsuit is coming in together gradually. You can see how fine this looks. It looks fine, right? Okay, so the next one to work on is our zip. For the zip, what I'll do is to firstly go ahead and pin this down following the zip allowance I left. So remember we left 1 inch. So you're going to pin this down following the zip allowance at the top, which we had. Then you repeat the same thing for both sides. Pin them properly so that it stays in place, please. So I turned this to the wrong side and then pin them properly. So this is what it looks like after I finished. I'm going to go over to the machine and then start stitching this down. So I will just stitch my zip firstly, stitch it down on both ends. So we're stitching close to the teeth of the zip, not on the teeth of the zip, okay, so that it gives us a fine finishing. Okay, so we finished stitching our zip. I'll just go ahead and confirm that I can open this. It's very important after stitching your zip, so not after going through the entire process and you go back and lose, right? So I'm going to open this up like so. Now remember that the zip area which we didn't stitch for the facing, now we'll be using it. So I'm going to align this way. You can see placing my zip in between the facing and the main piece. I'll align it together and then I will stitch it down at that end following the line I had before. So your stitching line should correspond with where you stitched earlier on. Okay, one should not be longer than the other. And after doing that, I will repeat the same thing for the other part of this. So you can see how this looks like. So we already have that closed up. So I'll just go ahead and repeat for the other end. So I've done that. See how nice this looks already. We already have that nice look. So what I'll do is to just trim off the excess zip I have left at the end. I'll take it off. Okay, now the next thing we'll do is to fold our facing downwards this way. So every stitching you're doing is happening at the wrong side of your fabric. Okay, so we're going to place it this way. Now you need to trace the space. What we're doing now is to stitch on that line we stitched before, but since we cannot see that stitching space, I just went in with my chalk to mark. You can use your fingers to indicate where your zip teeth is so that you don't make a mistake. All right, the reason why you're stitching on top of this is so that it looks neat on the other side by the time you finish. All right, so I'll just go ahead, stitch it down on this end and repeat the same process for the other one. So you can see this is what it looks like. Okay, so go ahead and do the same thing for the other one. So this brings us to the end of our video. Thank you for watching. If you're yet to subscribe, please subscribe to the channel. Please do well to like and share. Okay, so you can see how this looks, see how nice it looks. Okay, you don't need to have any stitches on top, right? So the last thing we're going to do is to go ahead and just hem the edges of this jumpsuit, and that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.